Hello and welcome back to BIONICLE Autopsy, the show where we cut through Bionicle piece by piece. Now, in the past, all my autopsy videos have kind of revolved around one similar topic, and that is the ending of Bionicle. Yes, the infamous event that we all remember. Now, I was asked an interesting question in my last video, and that was, what were to happen if nothing ever went wrong? What if Bionicle was never cancelled? It's a very interesting prospect, so let's talk about it. Now, as we all know, LEGO's had many different storylines in the past, not just Bionicle, and to answer this question, I think the best way to do it is to actually analyze some of these stories and compare and contrast it to their newer, current stories, and kind of get a feel as to what direction LEGO might have taken Bionicle if it was still around. Now, for the most part, all of LEGO's system sets kind of follow three core ideas: space, town, and castle. And if you're familiar with Knight's Kingdom, this would be an example of a line that's kind of sprouted from one of these three ideas, this one obviously belonging to castle in particular. However, for the most part, all of these themes sort of originate from one of these three ideas. Some stretched a little more than others, so say like NINJAGO would be based off ninjas, ninjas being a theme that kind of sprouted from the castle line because of its historical nature. NINJAGO, obviously deviating a bit from its predecessor's roots, is still fundamentally based on the core concept of having a historical theme, historically accurate or not. Obviously, this categorization works for some of LEGO's themes and not so much for others. So the Legends of Chima, for example, would be sort of an oddball original concept that doesn't really fit in any of the other ideas. And usually LEGO puts in a lot more focus in their original concept ideas because there's a lot more that needs to be conveyed to the audience for them to get behind purchasing it. So, for example, you don't really need to come up with a big backstory or a plot to Castle because you don't really need to understand why, how, or who to understand that there's a bunch of knights about to storm a castle. It's a fairly easy concept to grasp. However, with a theme such as Bionicle or Chima, there has to be a lot more explaining to go into it. And to do this, they usually use TV shows or comic books to convey this explanation, to bring forth the backstory that they've kind of cooked up in their minds, so it's easier for people to get behind the premise and buy the sets. And obviously the biggest example of this would be Bionicle, because it is LEGO's most expansive theme as far as story goes. But two other lines that were pretty popular back during Bionicle's heyday, both with backstories, would be the previously mentioned Knight's Kingdom and Exoforce. Now, analyzing these three themes, you'll notice several similarities between each of them. Each theme features a set number of heroes, usually differentiated by a color or special ability, who band together to protect a set location that they inhabit, and defeat a mysterious villain who has captured their wise elder and uses brainwashed minions to do his bidding. A villain that usually has some very close relationship with the elder leader himself. It goes without saying that all three of these lines are very similar in premise, each borrowing certain aspects from the other, so it could be in the realm of possibility that if Bionicle were to continue, some of its future ideas might reflect what happened in these lines. Now, Knight's Kingdom was a bit different than Bionicle and Exoforce in the fact that it actually had some closure in its ending. Now, obviously, what defines a good ending is a very subjective process, and Knight's Kingdom's story is on a far smaller scale than that of Bionicle. However, for the most part, the entirety of its story had come to an end, with no questions left unanswered. There was still room to continue the story and bring about something new, but what was said was done, and continuing it wasn't really necessary. The Knight's Kingdom story basically revolves around an evil knight named Vladik, who is the king's advisor. Vladik betrays the king, kidnaps him, and hides him deep within the dungeons of their castle, and then declares a tournament to be held to determine who the next king will be. Vladik, of course, entering into the tournament himself with a trick up his sleeve, called the Book of Morcia. Now, obviously, the truth is revealed and Vladik is captured and King Matthias is freed. However, come Wave 2, Vladik eventually escapes and creates a powerful object called the Vlad Mask, which he uses to take over the entire kingdom and threaten to destroy Morcia. However, the previous rookie, now knighted Sir Jaco, eventually stops and captures him. Now, this is all pretty standard stuff. LEGO has followed this pattern quite a lot. In fact, we've even seen it with Bionicle itself. Trusted advisor turns out to be evil and is jealous of the king, tries to take him down and become the king himself, is stopped by the rookie heroes, somehow manages to come back and actually successfully take over the kingdom this time, and the heroes are forced to upgrade with new armors and weapons to take him out yet again. Obviously, in Bionicle's case, there's a lot of added detail here, but the basic structure of this story is exactly the same. The heroes are the Toa Mata to Toa Nuva, Kingdom is the Matoran universe, and Makuta is the trusted advisor. And so from premise to end, Knight's Kingdom really wasn't that different from Bionicle, the biggest difference being Knight's Kingdom only ran for 2 years. Bionicle ran for 10. So what does that really say about BIONICLE? If you look at Exoforce, the story was heading in almost the exact same direction, even down to the new suits of armor that would be used to battle the villain and save their leader once and for all. Essentially, what LEGO has done is used 3 different themes to tell the same story. A story whose purpose is really to just set up some foundations for these themes and get people to buy into the sets. Due to its popularity, BIONICLE proved to be the most promising theme to convey this story, which is why it was expanded upon so much, whereas the other 2 were kind of stopped in their tracks early on. It goes without saying that Knight's Kingdom and Exoforce weren't nearly as popular as BIONICLE was. But what can we infer from this? It is a fact that the ending that we got for BIONICLE was not the one that was originally intended. On December 15th of 2009, Greg Farsty posted on his BZ Power blog, BIONICLE number 5, Treatment. It is essentially a mock-up script of the next BIONICLE movie that was to take place directly after The Legend Reborn. And it's a rather fascinating read, so I'll provide a link in the description in case you're interested in reading it yourself. The script follows the tale of Matsunui, Akar, and Kina as they travel through Barra Magna into the Valley of the Maze, after obtaining a coin with the map of the maze inscribed on its back. Now, the biggest difference between this script and what was actually canon would be the introduction of the Elemental Lords. You see, this script was written before BIONICLE's cancellation was even considered, so it was intended to span out over the course of an entire year with sets in mind, similar to how The Legend Reborn had covered most of the story of 2009. Here we have Matsunui, Kina, and Akar as returning characters joined by a few new faces on their travels, with the Elemental Lords showing up as this year's villains. And instead of the prototype robot being rebuilt directly after the events at the Valley of the Maze, Matsunui, Akar, and Kina are actually transported into a new world, a world that was populated with biomechanical dinosaurs, hinting that the year of 2011 would actually cover the trio's adventures on this world in an attempt to get back to Barra Magna, create the robot, and fight Makuta. And in the end, the final climax between Matsunui and Makuta would probably end up being very similar to what we did get in BIONICLE canon. However, it goes without saying that BIONICLE was planned for several more years before that would happen. But due to BIONICLE's planned cancellation, this was all pushed forward, and a lot of plans are dropped. If Exoforce and Knight's Kingdom taught us anything, it's that when there's not a whole lot of popularity for a line, it all tends to end the same. The villain takes full control, the good guys get some new armor and tools, and they find a way to bring him down. But if nothing went wrong and BIONICLE did have the popularity it needed to continue, what we could have gotten is already given to us right here for 2 more years, and who knows what would have happened after that. We could have gotten huge biomechanical dinosaurs, similar to the Rahi from 2001. These kind of sets were already hinted at with Barana, Scopio, and Skirmax. And 2011's theme could have led to a whole line of sets such as these. But we do have to remember that all of this is being presented based off a script that was never actually approved by LEGO, meaning that this is only one theory. And if you've been following this series, then you're very aware of LEGO's tonal shift throughout the years with their newer lines such as Hero Factory, Chima, and Ninjago. All 3 lines containing a far more light-hearted feel than that of BIONICLE. It can't really be confirmed that this tone shift is in response to BIONICLE's cancellation or not, but if we assume that it isn't, then perhaps it can give us a clue as to what the tone would be like, say BIONICLE was never cancelled. Perhaps the later years of BIONICLE would be presented with a far more light-hearted and childlike atmosphere, a large change from the dark and serious tone of 2006. Perhaps if the Elemental Lords ended up being sets, their personalities would be more akin to that of Hero Factory villains than of BIONICLE Titans that we have gotten in the past. Perhaps the Deus Ex Machina of golden armor would have never even been presented in the future of BIONICLE. Perhaps traveling to this mysterious dinosaur world could have revealed some hidden secrets that would help enhance the prototype robot, enough that it could actually fight back against Makuta himself. Perhaps Matsunui could have found a way to communicate with the Toa Nuva and direct them to take out Makuta from the inside, rather than Makuta and Matsunui having some big fistfight to see who passes out first. Or maybe the ending could have proved to be even more symbolic, and Matsunui would have to team up with the Toa Nuva and Taka Nuva and use the power of unity, duty, and destiny to actually take out Makuta, possibly revealing Taka Nuva's true destiny. Further, BIONICLE years could prove to be completely different than anything we've even thought of. It truly is a very, very fascinating topic to think about, and I want all of you to come up with your own ideas as well. Post them in the comments section if you want. I'd love to hear them. But as far as this autopsy goes, it's a very hard question to answer. And unfortunately, I don't think there really is an answer for it that's nothing more than opinion or speculation. And everything so far in this video has purely been what BIONICLE could have been if it weren't cancelled. But I personally don't think we will ever really know what BIONICLE would have been. But I think we can all agree that it would have been quite the spectacle to see. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been BIONICLE Autopsy, the show where we cut through BIONICLE piece by piece. I will see you next time. Feel free to post any ideas you may have for the next autopsy in the comments below. And I'm completely serious about hearing your ideas for the ending of BIONICLE. I would love to hear them. But until next time, this is Varderan, signing off. Now, Knight's Kingdom is a little different than Hero Factory and Exoforce. Hero Factory and Exoforce. I meant Bionicle Exoforce, oh god. Now, Knight's Kingdom is a little bit different than Hero Factory. I did it again. Now, Knight's Kingdom is a bit different than... Now, Bionicle is a bit different... Now, Knight's Kingdom is pretty different than Hero Factory, and I said Hero Factory again. I can't believe I just said Hero Factory again. Now, Knight's Kingdom is pretty different than oh, no, that was right. No. Now, Knight's Kingdom is a bit different than Bionicle and Hero Factory. I said Hero Factory. Why? What is up with Hero It's a bit different than Bionicle and Exoforce. Why can't I say that? Now, Knight's Kingdom is a bit different than Bionicle and Hero... Now, Bionicle was a bit different than Bionicle and Exo... Oh, God. Bionicle was a bit different than Bionicle. And it goes without saying that... I just realized I say it goes without saying quite a lot.